The Forest Friends Episode 10, The Firefly Queen's Request.
As they emerged from the crystal caves, blinking in the twilight, Sparkletwig suddenly froze mid-flight. Her glow pulsed rapidly, like a heartbeat made of light.
"Do you feel that?"
she whispered, her wings quivering.
"The air. It's full of firefly magic."
Before anyone could respond, the forest around them came alive with thousands of tiny lights. Fireflies, more than Tommy had ever seen, swirled through the air in intricate patterns. But these weren't ordinary fireflies. Their lights changed colors as they flew, creating ribbons of rainbow light in the darkening forest.
"The rainbow flight!"
Grace breathed in awe.
"Grandmother told me about this. It only happens when the Firefly Queen needs to summon someone urgently."
The shadow collector, who had been perched on a nearby tree, ruffled its dark feathers nervously.
"The Firefly Queen hasn't called for anyone in over 100 years.
It said.
Not since the Great Forest Eclipse."
Grunt hugged his heart-shaped rock closer.
Is that bad?"
The fireflies began to spiral around them, their lights forming a kind of staircase in the air. At its top, a figure appeared that made them all gasp. The Firefly Queen was about Sparkletwig's size, but her wings were enormous and seemed to be made of living light. Her crown was fashioned from morning dewdrops that caught and reflected every color of her subjects' lights.
"Brave friends,
Her voice chimed like crystal wind chimes.
I apologize for interrupting your adventure, but I need your help. Something is stealing my firefly's colors."
She gestured to a group of fireflies whose lights flickered weakly in plain white.
Without their rainbow lights, they cannot perform the dawn dance that helps wake the forest each morning. Already some parts of Whispering Woods are sleeping too deeply.
Tommy noticed that some of the trees did seem unusually drowsy, their branches drooping as if they were nodding off.
"But what could steal colors from fireflies?"
The queen landed on a nearby flower, her wings casting prismatic shadows.
We believe it's the work of the Grey Witch who lives in the colorless tower. She's always envied our rainbow lights, but until now, her magic wasn't strong enough to take them.
"What changed?"
Grace asked, already pulling out her grandmother's map.
The witch found an ancient artifact, the Prism of First Light. Legend says it was created from the first rainbow ever to appear in Whispering Woods. With its power, she can drain colors from anything she wishes.
Sparkletwig fluttered closer to the queen, her own light dimming with concern.
"But without the dawn dance."
The forest will fall into an endless sleep,
The queen finished sadly.
and all its magic will fade into gray.
Tommy looked at his friends. Grace was studying her map intently. Grunt was trying to comfort a colorless firefly by showing it his heart-shaped rock, and Sparkletwig was comparing her light to the weakening glow of the affected fireflies. Even the shadow collector leaned down from its perch, its great dark wings creating a protective canopy over them all.
"The colorless tower?"
Grace announced, pointing to a spot on her map that seemed to be sketching itself as they watched.
"It's at the edge of the mist marshes, past the dancing stones."
"The dancing stones?
Grunt perked up.
I know those. They only move when someone plays music they like."
The queen's wings brightened hopefully.
Then you'll help? Remember, the Grey Witch's magic is strong, but it can only take colors from things that are afraid. That's why she hasn't been able to affect the dawn dance until now. Fireflies are naturally joyful creatures. But she's been sending her gray shadows to frighten them first, making them vulnerable.
Tommy thought about this.
"So we need to be brave and happy to keep our colors safe?"
"And we need to get the prism back before the next dawn dance."
Sparkletwig added.
"When is that?"
Tomorrow morning?
The queen said softly.
You have until sunrise.
The friends exchanged determined looks. They had faced riddles, spiders, whispers, and shadow collectors. Surely they could handle one color-stealing witch.
"We'll need supplies."
Grace said practically.
"And a plan."
"I can gather my brightest berries,"
Grunt offered.
Maybe their colors will help.
And I'll fly ahead to scout the safest path through the mist marshes.
The Shadow Collector volunteered. The Firefly Queen touched each of their foreheads with her glowing wand, leaving a tiny spark of rainbow light.
To protect you from the grey shadows,
She explained.
and to remind you that the brightest colors come from the joy of working together.
As their newest adventure began to unfold, Tommy felt that familiar mix of excitement and nervousness in his stomach. But when he looked at his friends, Practical Grace, Gentle Grunt, Sparkly Sparkletwig, and the majestic Shadow Collector, he knew that together they could face anything, even a witch who stole colors from the world. Besides, he thought as they set off toward the dancing stones, gray had never really been his favorite color anyway. The fireflies swirled around them as they walked, their remaining rainbow lights showing the way forward. Somewhere in the distance, a tower rose into the darkening sky, its gray walls a challenge to everything colorful and bright in whispering woods. But that was okay. After all, they had until sunrise to bring color back to the forest, and this time they had a little extra light to guide them. As dawn approached, the friends crept through the mist marshes. The dancing stones hummed softly, responding to Grunt's quiet humming, a melody of hope and courage that seemed to part the thick gray mist before them. The colorless tower rose like a ghost against the pale sky, its walls shifting and blending with the surrounding mist. Grace's map flickered with warning signs, magical wards and tricky pathways that would confuse ordinary travelers.
The tower doesn't want to be found,
Grace whispered, tracing a finger along the map's glowing lines.
but we're not ordinary travelers.
Sparkletwig flew ahead, her tiny light pushing back against the gray shadows that tried to dim her brightness. The tiny spark from the Firefly Queen's wand glowed at her core, a reminder of their mission. Tommy noticed something strange. The closer they got to the tower, the more the gray seemed to have a personality, almost like a living thing trying to discourage them. Shadows reached out like grasping hands. Whispers of doubt tried to slip into their minds. But Grunt's gentle humming grew stronger. The Shadow Collector spread its wings, creating protective shadows that pushed back against the Grey Witch's magic. Grace's map began to glow brighter, revealing hidden paths. At the tower's entrance, they found the Grey Witch, not the terrifying monster they'd imagined, but a figure of profound sadness. Her gray robes seemed to be made of forgotten memories. The prism of first light hanging from her neck, its once brilliant colors now muted and fading.
Why do you want to steal colors?
Tommy asked, stepping forward.
Because I have none of my own.
She whispered. Her voice was like wind through empty branches.
I was born in a place of no color, no light. I thought if I could collect enough, I might finally understand beauty.
Sparkletwig flew closer, her light gentle.
But beauty isn't something you can steal.
She said.
It's something you create.
Grunt pulled out his brightest berries, reds as deep as sunset, blues as clear as summer skies, greens that held the essence of new leaves. He offered them to the Grey Witch.
Colors are gifts.
He said simply.
They're meant to be shared, not taken away.
The Shadow Collector spoke then, its voice deep and understanding.
We all feel different, alone, but stealing doesn't fill that emptiness. I know that very well.
Something remarkable happened. Tears formed in the Grey Witch's eyes, and they weren't gray but filled with the most beautiful, subtle colors. The color of dawn, of first light, of possibilities. The prism of first light began to respond to her genuine emotion. Its colors started to return, but this time spreading out, not being stolen, but freely given. The fireflies around them began to dance, their rainbow flight more brilliant than ever. Colors rushed back into the forest, waking trees, flowers, and sleeping creatures.
The dawn dance.
The Firefly Queen appeared, her wings spreading rainbows of light.
You've saved it.
As the first true light of day broke through, the Grey Witch looked different. Her robes now held subtle hints of color, not stolen, but born from understanding.
Would you like to learn about colors?
Tommy asked her.
We could show you.
And so, as the forest burst into full, vibrant life, an unlikely friendship began between those who had colors and one who was just learning to see them. The colorless tower wasn't gray anymore. It was filled with the most beautiful, soft colors of beginning, of hope, of understanding, of new friendships. Sparkletwig looked at her friends and winked.
Well,
She said.
that was easier than we thought.
The forest hummed with magic, and a new day began. The Grey Witch learned the same lesson that the Shadow Collector learned. Stealing is not good, and that one must be content with who you are. True happiness comes from within.
To be continued.